A very warm welcome to all. And today we are at the fourth day of the ECDF Worldwide Digital. And today we have two speakers lined up. We'll be starting our first session with Neha Seth. Neha Seth would be talking about how to prepare toddlers for online classes in preschool. Neha is an early childhood educator with 3+ years of professional work experience in counseling parents and teaching young minds. She's worked with renowned institutions of Delhi like Mother's Pride and Macoon's Preschool. Neha is also a social service professional and provide free interactive sessions online on various concerns from self-development to career building as a volunteer at Adore India. A big welcome to Neha.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wasafi. And hello,
And
everyone. Yes, yeah. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to start an introduction about myself. I'm Neha Seth, an early childhood educator by heart who worked with various institutions like Mother's Pride, Purdle, etc. to awaken the natural curiosity of young minds and provide them the holistic approach for the better development. However, I was an active member to help schools in generating leads and admissions through branding to effective staff selection, pedagogy, parent engagement, publicity, and many more functions. And I'm also a social worker as well who believe in a strong community where people endorse each other and can inspire hope, ignite the imagination, and instill a love of learning. Now, I would like to thank Dr. Vasavi Acharya for giving me this opportunity to talk about this generous topic with you all. So I will just share my screen. Is it visible, right? Okay. So today I'm going to talk about how to prepare your toddler for school and for online classes. As you all know, we are stuck in a pandemic. So online classes is the ultimate solution for all of us to provide the education to the young minds. And as the preschools are shut right now, in India as well, they are not going to open, I guess, in this academic year. So online classes is the only solution we have right now. So here, these are the things on which I'm going to talk about, why I chose this topic. Second, the most important thing, how to understand your child. This is the basic and the most important thing, that you have to understand your child, what this behavior is for, and what he is trying to telling you. The third is when the child is ready for school. This is the most frequent asked question by the parents, like when my child is ready for the school. Is it in 1.5, 1.8, 2 years, 3 years? When is the child is ready for the school? And there are some practical tips and suggestions as well. The next is what is separation anxiety and how to deal with it. You have saw the kids in the school when they are going for the first day, they just get cranky and cranky about leaving their parents, and this anxiety, you have to deal with it because the children are programmed like this. They have this fear to get separated from their parents. The next thing is the role of educators and parents in early childhood education. Next, introduction to homeschooling. As the schools are shut, the homeschooling is the only way that we are teaching the young minds, and how to make them sit for the online classes. They have this mood swings. They don't want to sit for like 40 to 45 minutes straight to just listen to the teacher. And the last and not the least, all children are different. Every child is unique. They all are different. So, why I chose this topic? When I was in a school, when I was just counseling parents, when they just, for the first day, they just came to drop their child, the I just saw children crying, being clinky, desperately to legs, and next, parents trying to console their young ones and fighting back their own tears. Kids trying to keep order, bell sounding, and panic screams. Yes, this is the normal daily routine. This is the normal daily start of a school. While these words could describe some rate, chaotic scene, they also describe the normal start of every school day. Yes, this is a normal start. Whenever the schools open, whenever the parents are coming to drop their child, this is a normal start. Parents are very, the child is getting cranky and clingy that I don't want to go to the school. So the emotions run very high. Furthermore, the kids aren't the only ones panicking. Caregivers too scramble to find the right thing to say or do to ease their child's fear. It's not easy to know how to fix it right. But there are some approaches that are more helpful than others. And there are also some things you have been doing that are less helpful than you think. Just to understand this, we have to understand our child better. So this is a question which arises: how to understand your child better. Ask questions that encourage communication. Just communicate with your child. Ask like about anything or everything. Observation is the key. Show empathy. Spend some quality time. Spending quality time doesn't mean that the child is just playing by himself. Just spend some quality time. Talk to them. Read with them. Enjoy with them. Sing rhymes with them. Dance with them. Listen to your child properly. Listen to everything whatever they say, even in a childish language. Just listen and try to empathize what they are saying. So this is that I already said, this is the frequently asked question by a lot of parents: when my child is ready for school. The appropriate age for preschool is 1.8 to 2 years. This time in child's life around 2 is in Montessori called a development crisis. Perhaps the oppositional phase or the phase of ego formation. The title ego formation is a bit more positive than oppositional or terrible tools. Yes, this reflects how this is such an exciting time for children to learn new things and adapt a new environment. So, preparing a toddler for a preschool doesn't mean you have to prepare them to get ready, to get a separation from their parents. No, there are other things as well to prepare a toddler for the school, for the study, for the education they are going to have, for the new environment, for the new society, for the new people they are now going to deal with. So there are the key things, that is, talk to them, read to them, and let them play. These are the three key things. Whenever a parent come to me and ask me like, how would I prepare my child for the school? He had like never had a word with somebody else. So these are the three key things. Just talk to them, read to them, and let them play. But how? So first of all, talk to them. We should always talk to our child, have conversations about anything that you can think of. Just talk about anything or everything. Just ask them questions. Wait for them to answer. Point out things that we see in our daily life and as well what they think. Just talk about the daily rituals, about the household things, how you are working in the home or in the office, and what they think about. Just they won't give you the right answer or they won't give you the exact reply, but just talk to them. This also builds their vocabulary. It teaches them to have a conversation and to listen and wait their turn. Yes, this we just always think just to increase the vocabulary, we just get to learn a new language. No, we just have to communicate. The more we communicate, the more we build our vocabulary. So it teaches them to have a conversation and to listen as well. Listening is also important while how to speak. Like we should also learn how to listen. We sometimes don't listen to anybody. We just speak what we have to speak. So just let them listen and wait their turn to answer. Read to them. Always read to them. You should give children opportunities to explore books, to read books with you, to listen to you read, and just sit and have time to flip through them and learn what the books look like. Yes, they don't know what is book, what is bags, and what are they. Just let them do it. Let them know what is books and just read with them. Before children go to bed, it's nice time to read them a story and to have them help you to read a book by looking at the pictures. By looking at the pictures, they got very fascinated. So, and listening to your words and repeating it back. Giving children shared book experience at home, setting them up for preschool where the children are ready to do on a daily basis. What they are going to do in a school, just prepare that environment at home itself. So they won't feel that in a school they won't at home. They just need to feel safe and feel they are at home. Read to them. They are read to in large group. There's typically a center that they can read on their own, and they can read books on their own, and they can sit with a teacher and have a one-on-one book experience. Let them play. So there's a term which is like a parallel play. You should let them play with others as well. So with the reading and talking, the last thing you should always let children do is play. And we want to give children a lots of opportunity to play with other children. You can take them to park. You can take them to play areas. You can have play dates at home. Right? Like we are stuck in a pandemic. We can't take children outside. We can't take them to park. We can just set up a play dates at home as well. This gives them a chance to play with materials with somebody else, to interact with them, to have conversations with them, to watch another child play and see if maybe that's something they can do as well. So some practical tips and suggestions are like this. These beginning social experiences will set them up nicely for when they walk to a preschool classroom and are given the opportunity to talk to 15 of their peers and choose who they want to play with and where they want to play. So the key is to really give them the life experiences, to give them a lots of book, talk to them a lot, let them play, and when they walk into a preschool classroom, they will be ready to go. So after making them prepared how to talk, how to read, and how to listen, there is something which comes up when you drop off your child at school is the separation anxiety, and a lot of parents deal with that. So what is separation anxiety? Separation anxiety in children is normal, like other forms of anxiety. Kids' brain are naturally programmed to fear distance from their parents, and parents are too wired to feel anxious when your babies aren't close, when they are out of sight and under someone else's supervision. The object is to recognize when there are no real dangers and to know when to let go of anxiety and not eliminate it. Some levels of separation anxiety are much more common and can be managed at home with the little planning and practice. Okay, so this is what the separation anxiety called. Now, how to deal with it? How to deal with the separation anxiety? Start talking. Talk, talk, talk. Yes, this is the basic thing. This is the most important thing. Start talking. Do start talking about what's about to happen before it happens. Make a plan. It is the first day of school that has been worried. Start talking about it a week before, including details. Start talking about it a week before, including details, how you will pick them up again at the end of the day, help them pack their backpacks, pick up an outfit, select the lunch items, all in advance. Just prepare them in advance that they are going to be in a school, how exciting it will be, how they are going to play with other children as well. Frequent visit to school, do show their school environment before they need to go on their own. Take advantages so you can walk into the building with them and help them get familiar. Meeting the school staff and seeing their space can help with your anxiety too. Now, create a goodbye routine. Do create a goodbye routine and stick to it. You cannot do this in advance also. Whatever routine you decide on, the most important thing is to leave when it's done and not get baited into staying longer or doing the routine again or giving one last hug. Set the expectation that goodbye means goodbye until you see them after school. The most important things: control your own emotions. Do your best to appear calm and control your own emotions. Even it's your heart is burning inside. Even is this your youngest baby, she's going off to school, and next thing you know, she'll be moving out, and you can't help but be sad. Hiding emotions from kids isn't always the best practice, but remember, this is about helping them feel secure without you. They don't want to leave you while you are crying anymore, then you want to leave them. Do not go overboard. Set a healthy limit for the amount of hand holding which child can expect from you. Perhaps you introduce him or her to the new teacher or the caregiver, but you encourage the child to walk up and say goodbye on their own by pulling back just enough in the right places. You are teaching them that they're capable of short bursts of independence. Yes, make them independent. You may need to remind them of those victories later. Do not linger too long. Nobody doubts the pain of walking away from your child if he or she is upset and scared. But they are smart, and if you linger, they will learn quickly that their tears mean you won't leave. And the last one is, don't sneak out. He is not crying now and his back is turned. And now, if I just slip cut now, we can avoid tears. Seems logical enough. Until you remember that this is about building long term reliances and not about short term avoidance. Don't lure them with rewards or threaten them with consequences. Don't bribe your child. This is the most important thing which I want to tell all the parents. Don't bribe them. Don't bribe with that, like, I will give you this if you do this, I will give you that if you do that. No, just don't bribe or don't threaten them. If you stop crying and get through your day, I'll give you an ice cream. Or if you don't go in there, then no TV for you tonight. May seem reasonable strategies, but rewards and consequences are tools for dealing with behavior. But separation anxiety isn't a behavior. It's natural instinctual reaction that will learn to control with help and support. Now, after dealing with the separation anxiety, the kid is in the school. So, what are the role of educators and parents in EC, in early childhood education? So, the first is role of parents. Children's development of the cognitive and social skills needed for success later in school is supported by responsive parenting. Parent involvement in EC can extend the experience that a child has inside the classroom to actual activities that happen in the home. Parents who run in tune with the school curriculum and keep themselves updated with what is happening in their children's classroom are better able to establish a connection between home and school. The role of parents, if I will say in short, that you have to make a connection between what is happening in the school and what is happening at the home. You have to make a connection between both of them. And if you repeat what happened in the school and you make a like environment, school environment at home, it will be easier for you as well. Next thing is, what are the role of educators? An educator most important responsibility is to search out and construct meaningful educational experiences that allow students to solve real world problems and show they have learned the big ideas, powerful skills and habits of mind and heart that meet agreed on educational standards. During play, we must include facilitation, engagement, and appropriate individualization for each development level. We have to think like according to every child, because every child is different. There is something uniqueness in every child. We have to make appropriate individualization for each child's development level. So here I would like to introduce or give an introduction about the homeschooling. Homeschooling is a progressive movement around the world in which parents educate their children at home. This is the major topic or the hot topic when we are stuck in a pandemic and the schools are shut. We are forced to do the homeschooling right now. Parenting in pandemic is not easy. At the best of times, it is hard enough to trying to keep kids happy and healthy and busy where they might be stuck at home. So the main thing is when you're homeschooling your child, you must be taking the online classes from some other teachers, or some preschools are also offering some online classes, and these online classes are running nowadays. So how to make them sit for them, because they can't sit for straight like 30 to 40 minutes. They can't. They are kids. They get easily distracted. So it's a challenge that parents are facing because it's a new kind of learning for children, and they are not used to do this kind of situation. And therefore, here are some tips that will help you in making your children sit for the online classes. First, make classes fun for children. As a parent, it's our job to make the classes fun for children. Children get easily distracted. They cannot sit at one place for so long. Sit with your child throughout the class. Enjoy as a child with them. So be excited, enjoy the rhymes, sing along, dance, enjoy the story, talk about it, especially if you think your child is not able to understand it. Talk, talk, talk. Talk about the class with them and keep the power pack. Involve children in the preparation of the class. When they used to go to school, remember they used to have rituals like hanging back, say bye to everyone. So here you involve your children in setting up the space. When you are having an online class, just set up the space and involve your children in doing that. So here you involve your children in setting up the space and make the transition also smooth. Don't be too abrupt. Let the child know maybe 10 minutes before that it's time for the class. Let's start preparing. Third is have a designated place for class. Don't be like if it's an online class, you are taking it at home. So don't be like you like if you are taking the one day you are taking the class in some other room, now you are taking class at another room. No, have a designated place for the class. The next thing is to remember is to have a designated place for class with least distraction also if possible. The place should be confined, maybe in a room where you can just lock the door so that even if the child wants to move between the class, he or she cannot go too far, and you can just get the child back. Give break to your child. Another thing you can do is to give breaks to your child, especially if you think that your child is not able to sit for a class like 40 to 45 minutes straight. So if you want to move around, if they want to move around, let them and get them back within a minute. Sometimes such breaks help children to sit for another 10 to 15 minutes of class. It will help them to get concentrated if they get a break, because they are not used to this kind of they are not even used to studying. Now this is very important. Praise your child for sitting as much as he or she does. Just praise your child whenever he or she actually sit for the class. Even it's for that 5 to 10 minutes in the beginning, it encourages them. Encourage your child. It's our job to encourage them for whatever they are doing, if it's right. Right. And make sure you praise them genuinely. Only say what your child is actually doing. If he or she is doing a wonderful job, just let them know what they are actually doing. Just don't make a hype of it. Just let them know what they are doing. Empathize with them when they show disinterest. So this is the important thing which I always say to parents. Just empathy is the key. Just empathize with them. They don't know what are emotions. They don't know how to show their emotions, but you need to understand them and you need to empathize. Like you can say like, I know, I can understand you are not feeling good, or you have this big feelings, I can totally understand, but we have to do this, we can go through this together. So empathize. Always empathize with children when they express disinterest in the class. They might just tell you that I'm getting bored or I don't want to sit. So instead of saying that, no, you have to sit, why are you getting bored? Just let them know. You can see or understand how they feel, or how difficult it is for him or her to sit for the class, and they'll say, but we have to now. I can totally understand you are getting bored in the class, but we have to study. See, the teacher is doing such a good job. You can just actually don't do it, just sing a rhyme, just dance with the teacher, so you can just make fun in the class and just empathize them. Last but not the least, all children are different. Every child is unique. Don't compare any child. Nurture their strengths and let the weaknesses be. Every child is different. Every child has the uniqueness in them. All children are different. Accept your children, explore their strength, and help them rise into a successful and happy adult. This is our job. The kids doesn't know what are emotional, what are emotions. And this is our job to develop their social and emotional development and to develop them physically, develop their language. So this is our job. So accept your children, explore their strength, and help them rise into successful and happy adults. So thank you very much for having me. You can connect with me in the given handles. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Vasavi Acharya, for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neha. This was a really, really insightful session in terms of what we need to do with children, from separation anxiety to the other things that we need to look into. And if there are any questions, we can have them in the chat box, because we have about 2 minutes left. And if there are none, then we move on to the next session. And today's second session will be conducted by Garima Srivastava. Garima would be talking about multimodal literacy in early years. Garima is an early childhood coordinator at Pathway School, Noida, India. And she has 10 years of hands on experience in early childhood care and education. So I welcome Garima, and I hand over to her to start her presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Vasavi. It is always a pleasure to connect with you. Your platform, ECDF, I'm sure is doing a wonderful job by bringing, I think, global practitioners together at one platform, and they are able to share their experiences. And once again, I'll say that thank you so much to all the participants and my fellow speakers who just spared their gracious time to be here with us. Thank you so much. So I'll just share my screen. And I will take on from where Neha has left. So basically, Neha has brought the child to us in the preschool years or in the playway. And she's also helped us go through the transition anxiety. The child is settled in the classroom. And if I talk about the pandemic time also, she's given us great insights about what can be the best practices to go ahead with little children. So thank you, Neha, for handing over the child to us. And now I think I'll take it forward talking about their early literacy and early numeracy. So multimodal literacy in early years, as communication practices have become increasingly shaped by developments in information and multimedia technologies, it is no longer possible for us to think about literacy solely as a linguistic accomplishment. A wonderful line I read in one of the research papers by Jewett in 2008 that he wrote. And I totally agree. Earlier, when we used to talk about literacy, we used to always look at the language aspects of it: reading, writing, speaking, and hearing. But now the definition of literacy has increased many folds. So I think let's start unpacking what do I mean by this definition over here. And if you see on the right hand side, there is a picture. This picture, I've taken it from my provision. So as a practitioner, one of the practice that I totally swear by is setting up continuous provision and linked provisions in my settings. And this is one of the pictures from one of the continuous provisions. So we try keeping it a balance of open-ended and closed-ended engagements. And if you see over here, these are simple Lego blocks with little children on top of that. So when the children used to come in the morning, they had a morning ritual of going to these different centers. Centers were kept keeping in mind mark making, their mark making exercises, open-ended exploration, their fine motor exploration, their transferring skills. And while engaging, we certainly had evidences of them talking. We certainly collected evidences of them bringing their home cultures, their home motherly talks, and also engaging in other kind of premuscular or muscular activities, wherein we could see a lot of pre-literacy, pre-writing skills happening all together at one platform. Moving on to the next slide. Early literacy. So literacy is more than reading and writing. It takes place in many different contexts and places. Literacy is a social practice involving wide variety of texts used for a wide variety of purposes in different contexts. So when I say different contexts, we have to recognize that a child as young as 1.5, 2 years old, 3 years old, when they enter into the system, into their earlier setting, they are trying to make meaning out of their own little learnings, out of their own little play experiences, out of their print-rich environment around them. So if you look at the right-hand side road safety picture, again, this is from one of my setting, wherein this is from a classroom of a pre-nursery class, and the children are 2.5 years old. Now, still the children haven't learned how to read. But why is it important to have that print-rich environment around them? Because that's where they start making connection by looking at the pictures, by looking at the words, the symbols which are written, and they start understanding that these symbols do make some meaning. These pictures, they start relating it to their real world experiences. Yes, I have seen this red light on the road when I was going with my mama. I know that we wear the helmet when it is important when I'm riding my bike. So similarly, the phone cross. So they understand these experiences, and that's how they bring their knowledge from home. As as Miss Neha mentioned, the word of transition. That's how the connection happened. The knowledge from home, the knowledge from their play experiences that they've had in 2.5 years at home, they see it in the classroom, they see it transpiring, plus they add on to their own learning experiences. If you see on the left hand side, a child has tried making a mark with the finger painting. Now, these are again very important literacy experiences that the child is bringing on, is building upon. So it is very important for we as practitioners to plan in such a way that we are giving enough opportunities to our young learners to be able to symbolize it, symbolic representation of their thinking, of their meaning making, of such exercises, of environment around them. Let's have a look why and how can we put it all together. Now, here I put a picture of mine doing a shared story reading, storytelling activity with the little children. So, as teachers, we are faced with the challenges of broadening our understanding about literacy and literacy teaching in early childhood and primary setting in order to recognize and incorporate all the modes of meaning making. It's a very important term, meaning making, because that is what we are trying to focus over here when I'm talking about multimodal literacy. What all modes that the child is able to identify to make meaning of his environment, of his literacy, of his language, of his, if he has not got the language yet, his ideation. And similarly, exactly the corresponding definition goes for a practitioner. What all modes the practitioner is able to apply in making meaning of a child's understanding. How can we not narrow it down to just reading, writing, listening, and speaking? How can we look at a symbolic representation where the child is drawing his mama and the child himself? Why not that a literacy? Why not a child just flipping the book? The child is not able to read yet, but he's trying to flip up the book and making his own stories by looking at the picture. That's a literacy for that child who's trying to make meaning out of the pictures. Again, the child just copying how my teacher just reads through the words. but the child is still not able to. That's a literacy for the child, because these are all pre-literacy, emergent literacy skills that the child. So emergent literacy is a word which Mary Clay wonderfully talked about. So whenever we are doing a storytelling exercise, as a practitioner, it's a ritual for us to first talk about the cover page of the storybook, talk about the title of that storybook, talk about what pictures are being drawn over there. We definitely mention about the author, the illustrator, then talking about the action of flip, turn the page, and then reading the story with the children by pointing at the words, making them understand the picture. That's how a child makes connection that yes, the words written in a storybook does have some meaning which is related to the pictures above it. So story reading, storytelling, from a very early start is very, very important, whether it is with the parents at home, whether it is in any environment. Even for transition, I think stories are a wonderful way to connect socio-emotionally with children, especially during this pandemic time. I will touch upon the pandemic time a little later. Let's just keep on unpacking what we are trying to do over here. So digitalization as a modality in early years. Now we've understood that a child trying to make meaning through different modalities, whether it is a song, a child is singing, maybe Five Little Monkeys, or whether the child is just doing a mark making with his cards, with his crayons. The child is understanding that yes, when I do something, my marks are left on the paper, and these are what pre-writing skills start developing here, and these marks do make meaning. So he needs to be appreciated. When I say continuous provision, the provisions have to be set in a very balanced way in the morning, not making them sit in the classroom in a very static order. Similarly, besides that, storytelling, story reading, children talking to each other, children bringing in things from their home, maybe a calendar, maybe their mama's picture. Everything is an evidences of child's emerging literacy skills. And adding on to that, as we've entered the phase of globalization and technological advancements have impacted the way we make meaning in many other ways. Because nowadays, I would say the privileged families and upper middle class families, the children are blessed to have their phones with them, laptops around them. They see iPads around them, TV, and a lot of toys, which are music making toys. So they start from a very early age by getting media literate. So it's very important now that now since we've entered into a pandemic phase, and I think everything went on a standstill because it was very difficult time for, I would say, parents, that they could not take the children to school. So I think we as teachers and schools, being resilient, decided let's go to the children's home through digital mediums. So that's when we had our classes through Zoom and through MS Teams. Now, a very important challenge came with early years practitioners, how to reach out to little children, because for them, that socio-emotional connect is very, very important, and which was going missing altogether. Now, there were many children who were new to the environment also, who joined. And it was a time, if you say March, if in India, March is a time when new admissions come in and the old children have gone to the next class. So the teachers were also in transitions, because these were new teachers now, making relations with children. So how do we go by it? So that's when I think technology did happen to be a boon at this time, because it did help us to plan in such a way that everybody had to come together for the planning part. And that's when we thought that why not to have a synchronous and asynchronous teaching and learning go hand in hand. So besides doing short synchronous sessions with our children, we had to plan a full planner for asynchronous session that we had to mail it to the parents to be done at home. And similarly, when I say provisions, these provisions again had to be, our parents, actually the stakeholders became partners with each others in such a tandem way that they had to be taught. And because the role of a teacher now had to be carried on by the parents at home, they had to provide those stimulus, they had to provide those fine motor, gross motor, those sensorial experiences to little children sitting at home. But it could have been only possible with the guidance of the teachers. So I would say that's when the things became possible for us, and multimodality gained its more importance because we were collecting evidences of assessment through applications like Seesaw, applications like Nearpod, and teachers were doing video recordings, and these video recordings did help us to assess. Now children, since I said digital, they were a digital citizen from a very young age, so they were easily able to scribble on the screen. Children were definitely understanding the video recordings of the stories that teachers were sending home to make better connections socio-emotionally. As I said, we were new teachers and they were new children. So how to reach out to them, how to make sure that we connect better with them. So we thought of an idea, why not let's record our storytelling session and send it home. And parents were showing it to children at night. And that's when the child, when he came back to the next day, oh, I saw the story being narrated. You know, that personal experience, that happened more. Parents could have shown any story on YouTube, but when the teacher herself does it, it makes a lot of difference. Similarly, if you see the picture on the right, this is from one of my classrooms now, and I've shaded the child because obviously so we thought, what about the print-rich environment which we were able to provide in schools? How do we provide it at home? So we thought, why not to have our own work walls, because children were doing their own experiential engagements during virtual sessions. They were doing their own experiential and sensorial and other literacy, pre-literacy, mark-making engagements, tearing, pasting, everything with parents. We came to that level. Now, how to make it print-rich? So that's when we had our collaboration with our parent partners, and they agreed, yes, it does make a difference. And the child who is over here was so proud to see her work being there on the wall. And even initially we had one of our unit of inquiry as All About Me, where we talked about the child's family, child's siblings, child's features, child's body part. And so the whole collated collage over here, if you see, that's child's family. Then this is a craft by the child about himself or herself. Then there are different mark making activity. This is a literacy for the child of this age. That's how he's understanding. The child is trying to make meaning besides the other things. So every mode that we use to make meaning for a child's understanding, and every mode that the child is using to make meaning of his or her own world around and his or her own understanding, is what multimodality is in literacy. So that's when we have to really push the old definition. We have to stretch this balloon a lot bigger now. So moving on, over here also, this is a very young age. It's actually a mother toddler program. And herein we thought, so how do we approach the challenges of literacy teaching in an ever-changing technological advanced society? So in order to enrich and extend the possibilities for literacy teaching, children's home and community literacy practices must be brought in. Now, that's also a very important aspect. We've touched upon, there are a lot of families of underprivileged children. Now, they come from, in India, they come from different areas. Somebody is coming from Orissa, Bengal, UP. We have varied languages, we have varied cultures, we have varied environment, varied home structures. So how do we make each and every child feel important in a classroom setup? This is only possible when we bring in their literacy practices to our classroom. We bring in their culture to our classroom. That's when every child feels important. Even if a child who's coming from south of India and Tamil is his language, any script written in Tamil, a calendar, a document brought to the class does make a lot of difference to that child. Again, a picture of the family, anything. So these are all, again, very important I would say funds of knowledge. Louis Moll has talked about funds of knowledge, and these are important funds of knowledge that the child brings in from his own experiences, from his own little world that he's been brought up into. So establishing the genuine partnership with families, children are more likely to succeed when they see these cultural funds of knowledge, their little festivals. There is Bihu somewhere, and there is a Christmas, and there is Chinese New Year, and there is, so these cultures and festivals and languages, even stories done by parents in their own native language might not be understandable by a child who's not from that language, but it does make a connection with the culture and the language, and understanding that we are one community and every person is respected here. So this is very important for early years, and these small evidences that the child brings from home is again a part of one of the modes of literacy that the child is bringing. Now, as I've already mentioned, different modalities used by teachers for pedagogy. If we just, this is one of the broad categories that now we have to broaden our horizon many folds. So even anything, any mode through visual representation that the child is trying to represent is a part of literacy. A child trying to visually make meaning, looking at rhymes, looking at stories, making meaning, that's a part. Oral, listening to stories, listening to parents at home, talking, everything is a part of. Gestural, initially before the language comes into existence, children are definitely using gestures. So making meaning with their gestures is again a part of literacy. Spatial, as I mentioned, print-rich environment, learning spaces is very important. How we enable our learning spaces when we are in the physical environment. That's also again a literacy for the child, because schools are big and they have enough learning opportunities for children to offer. So what all visual appetite we are trying to give to the child. Linguistic, language is the most important. Dr. Shonkoff has talked extensively about language and role and everything. Again, serve and return theories. So these are very important from a very early age. They say, in fact, before the child is born, it starts. So literacy is changing, and young children are increasingly exposed to communication tools and situations that are multimodal rather than exclusively linguistic. Again, it is highlighting the same point, Hill and Nicholas in 2000, and Hassett calls early literacy instructions to move forward into graphics, imagery, and interactive forms of communication. So I'll just check the time here. Oh, I think I've spoken beyond my time. So sorry. So I'll just quicken up now. Now, as I've already mentioned, now in pandemic, it has to be a balance of synchronous and asynchronous, synchronous active engagement, music and movement, storytelling, authentic inquiries. These are again all snippets from my own classrooms and my own, and again, asynchronous, the teaching which parents are doing. As I said, the planners being sent home. So this is self-directed because the child can do it at his own will. Choice time is very important, whether in synchronous lesson or asynchronous. Collaborating with family, experiential engagements, all very important. Now, these are few pictures I've got from my own setting, which I used to set up with my teachers around. Again, giving enough opportunities for the child to play, morning provisions. If you see here, transferring, pre-numeric skills, pre-maths concepts, again, some of the scientific concepts of magnets, and then fine motor. There is Play-Doh. Play-Doh is always a wonderful hands-on, helps building in the fine motor muscles. And similarly, some of these are here, colors. And then open-ended, close-ended, it has to be a good balance of the activities. And play is actually, as they say, it's a very important work the child is doing. Now, I have no time to show you pre-recorded storytelling sessions. So we had done it, and maybe that I'll put it with the group. And it's just a nice verbose thing which I saw by Loris Meraguzzi, and it really made a lot of effect what all we are talking, but I'll not just take more time. So I'll just say thank you, and let's celebrate the childhood of our children together. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Garima. I think we have about 5 minutes with us. If you would want to show the session.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I think I just yeah. So we have time. So I will yeah. So this is one of the, since I was talking about. Hi, earlier. Can you see my screen? No.
No, it's not visible.
Okay. Yeah. So this is one of the story session that we teachers recorded just for sending home. Yes. Today we've got a wonderful story for you. Monkey Puzzle. And you know what? It is written by Julia Donaldson, and these beautiful pictures are by Axel Scheffler. So let's read the story. I've lost my mom. Hush, little monkey. Don't you cry. I'll help you find her, said the fluttery butterfly. Let's have a think. How big is she? My mom is bigger than you. Bigger than you? Oh, I think I have seen your mom. Come, little monkey. Come, come, come. No, 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 no. That's an elephant. That's not my mom. My mom is not gray and thick, and my mom's tail coils around the trees. She coils around the trees, and she. I think everybody might have got an idea about what I'm trying to say here. So I'll not just play the whole video. So thank you, Vasavi and everybody. And I think it is something we need to keep on learning. As practitioners, I would say that there is so much research happening around us. We need to keep ourselves abreast with whatever is being researched about, talked about, and then try and action. We teachers are actually always action researchers trying to do things at home and in our own practices. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Garima. That was a wonderful session, and I really love this story bit. And I would have, kept going, seeing it. In fact, I think we'll be running out of time shortly. So let me announce the upcoming sessions, which are on 26th. We are keeping Saturday and Sunday off because it's a weekend, and so we don't want to bother anyone with a 4:30 to 5:30 session. And our next session, last day of the ECDF Worldwide Digital is on the 26th. We are starting sharp at 4:30, and our speakers of the day are June O'Sullivan. She'll be joining us from UK, and she'll be talking about role of social enterprises working with children in early years in addressing child poverty. So we lot of us are working for children who are from the marginalized sections of the society, and I think this session is really going to be very, very useful for all of us. And the second session would be by Dr. Catherine Murray. She'll be joining us from Australia, and her topic is Gifted Children Who Have a Disability, the Truth About Twice Exceptional Children. So I look forward to having all of you in our upcoming, the last day of the conference, where we'll be winding it up as well. And also we'll be sending out the certificates to those who have dedicatedly come into the Zoom and have been, seeing all the sessions. And I also appreciate all those who have joined us in Facebook and written lovely comments and has really appreciated our work. Thank you so much, Neha and Garima, and thank you to all the attendees who have come today and joined us. A good bye-bye to all of you. A very good evening, a good morning, and a good afternoon to everybody. Have a great day ahead. Bye.